My name is Lena Hartman, and for as long as I can remember, I felt the world was far wider than the narrow house I grew up in the cramped shoe shop my father owned, where survival was considered the only ambition worth having, and anything beyond that an unnecessary luxury. Yet inside me lived a dream larger than all the walls that tried to contain it. A dream to become a doctor, a dream my family considered not just unrealistic, but almost offensive, because to them, I was the quiet, responsible one who kept everything running, the extra pair of hands no one thought could become anything more. When I finished high school and told my parents I wanted to study medicine, their laughter came before their objections. My mother shook her head and said, "Medicine? Lena, we barely afford groceries." While my father scoffed that medicine was for geniuses and rich people and that I was neither. And even my brothers, Evan and Jonas, laughed as if I had made a ridiculous joke. Their reactions hurt, but beneath the sting was clarity. When a dream scares or shocks others, it is probably worth chasing. I worked longer hours in the shop, saved every coin, studied behind the counter, between customers, in the storeroom, and at night when exhaustion blurred the lines of the textbook. And when the acceptance letter finally arrived, no one congratulated me. My father simply saying, "So you're leaving us? We're supposed to run everything while you chase nonsense?" That night, I sat by my tiny window, the birthplace of all my dreams, and wrote out a plan for my life. Every step, every sacrifice, ending it with one sentence: I will succeed no matter the cost. University was a battlefield. I worked, studied at night, gave private lessons, often survived on one meal a day, and listened to my family remind me I was wasting my time. But every lecture, every page felt like a step away from the walls that once kept me small. After 5 years, I stood alone on the graduation stage, watching classmates surrounded by families who celebrated them, while I stood with no one. Yet I felt powerful, because every step had been mine alone, and a single photo taken by a staff member became the only tangible proof of that victory. When I received an opportunity to train in Boston and told my family, they showed no pride, no excitement. My mother only asked if I was leaving the country now, and my father muttered that I should go and do whatever I wanted because they had never benefited from me anyway. On the day I left, no one stood by the door, and as I dragged my suitcase down the pavement, I felt myself detached from them physically and emotionally with each step. Boston was cold and foreign. I worked 12-hour shifts, studied 3 more, lived in a tiny room, cooked frugally, counted every dollar twice, washed my clothes by hand, walked everywhere, and for the first time, the struggle felt meaningful because it was mine and of my choosing. Months became years, and I grew stronger, more skilled, more confident, no longer the girl who had left home. But news from home grew darker. The shop failing, debts rising, my mother barely able to work, my father's health declining, my brothers scattering. And although my parents told me little, worry seeped through their voices. One evening, a call came that froze something inside me. My father's voice was weak and trembling as he said, "Lena, the bank is taking the house. We have no one else." I didn't respond immediately, as years of memories flashed. Every insult, every dismissal, every lonely graduation moment. But beneath it all was still a thin, unbroken thread tying me to them. And I reminded myself that I hadn't built myself to get revenge, but to rise above everything. After a long silence, I said, "I'm coming home." When I returned, the house looked smaller, as if time had shrunk it. My mother hugged me tightly, trembling with regret, and my father sat silently with eyes full of shame and relief. They waited for me to speak, waiting for the daughter they once dismissed to save them. And I looked at them not with anger, but with strength, as I said, "I'll help you, but things must change. No more belittling dreams, no more dismissing anyone's worth, and you must acknowledge that everything I achieved, I earned alone." Silence followed. until my mother whispered an apology, and my father added quietly that I had become more than they ever imagined. The next morning, I began working, organizing paperwork, meeting the bank, negotiating new terms, paying part of the debt from my savings, creating an online page, modernizing the store, improving marketing, bringing new products, training my father on the new system, while my mother helped without complaint for the first time. Months passed, and the shop slowly stood back on its feet, stronger and busier, and our home grew calmer and more honest than it had ever been. One night after closing, my father sat beside me on the curb and said, "If we could go back in time, we would never let you walk alone that day." And I smiled peacefully, because some victories are quiet and deeply personal. Today, as I walk through hospital halls in my white coat, carrying not just knowledge, but years of resilience, I know my life has come full circle. I built myself from nothing, then reached back to help the very people who once doubted me without losing my boundaries or pride. I am no longer the girl they believed was ordinary. I am a woman who rebuilt her destiny and still found space for grace.